Salvete omnes. This is chapter 35, exercise B. We are to parse the following Latin sentences and then translate them into English. Number 1, sententia prima. Milites a dextra cornu fortiores in proelio quam hostes erat. So we have milites from miles militus masculine, which means soldier. It could either be nominative plural, at which point it would be the subject, or it could be accusative plural, at which point it would be the direct object because it doesn't have a preposition in front of it showing motion towards. Next word is a, preposition, a-ab, takes the ablative to show separation. Can also mean a personal agent, or mean by, if we have a verb in the passive voice. We don't. This is a-ab, ablative of separation, from or away from. We're moving away from something. Separation. Dextro, from dexter, dextra, dextrum, meaning right, as opposed to sinister, meaning the left. And it's an adjective. We don't know what the case number gender is yet. Let's wait for its noun, which is cornu. Cornu us neuter, which means horn, like a unicorn or a cornucopia, a horn of plenty. It can also mean a wing of an army, at which point there are two wings. There's a left wing, there's a cornu sinistrum, and there's a right wing, a cornu dextrum. Here we have the cornu dextrum, a dextro cornu, with a-ab plus the ablative of separation. Cornu is ablative, singular neuter, separation. Note, because it is a fourth declension neuter, one of the very few of them, it could be nominative, it could be dative, it could be accusative singular. So it could be a whole bunch of things, but it is ablative singular neuter because of the preposition showing separation. That makes its adjective, dexter, dextra, dextrum, also ablative singular and neuter. So the soldiers, either the subject of the verb or the direct object of the verb, from the right wing. Fortiores, that comes from the adjective fortis, brave or strong. It's a comparative. I'm going to hold off on the case number gender until we find out with what it agrees. Could agree with the milites, braver soldiers, something about soldiers being braver or stronger. In, preposition, which takes the accusative to show motion towards, takes the ablative to show location, meaning in or on, and here we have proelio, the ablative of proelium, proeli neuter, meaning battle. We have the ablative singular, location with the preposition in. We are in the battle. Who's in the battle? Probably the soldiers. Well, the soldiers are from the right wing. Maybe they're braver in battle. Who knows? Let's finish up. Then we have quam, which is than, which makes sense because we have a comparative. We're comparing thing X with thing Y. Using quam, that means that thing X will have to be the same case as, thing Y will have to be the same case as thing X. Let's make sure we know what we're comparing first. Hostis, hostis masculine, which means the enemy or a public enemy as opposed to a private enemy, an inimicus. So that form hostes could be nominative plural with quam, or it could be accusative plural. But it's not going to be accusative because I peeked at the last word of the sentence. It is erant, which is a form of sum esse fui futurus, to be. And you cannot have an accusative direct object if you have a form of sum, if you have a form of to be. You can't have an accusative direct object because this is screaming out, because it's a linking verb, for a predicate nominative with a nominative subject. That makes milites not a direct object in the accusative, but soldiers, that's our subject in the nominative case. The soldiers from the right wing, they erant, third person plural, imperfect active indicative, they were fortiores. That answers the question about fortiores is nominative plural masculine. That's our predicate nominative. It's giving more information describing the nominative subject. The soldiers were more brave. They were braver. Which soldiers? The ones from the right wing. They were braver. Where? In battle. Oh, than whom? Than the enemy. So we have thing X, the soldiers, and we're comparing thing X, the soldiers, to thing Y, the enemy. Using quam, thing X is nominative. That makes thing Y, hostes, also nominative case. The soldiers from the right wing were braver in battle than the enemy. Optime, secunda, sententia secunda. Erat fidelis amicis, qui in ponte nocte capti sunt. So erat, third person singular, imperfect active indicative of sum esse fui futurus. When the form of sum is the first word of the sentence, it's usually existential sum. So it's showing that something was. So erat, there was. There was a something. Or something he was, she was. Fidelis, from fidelis, fidele, meaning faithful. It's a third declension two termination adjective like fortis forte. And you're usually faithful to someone or to something. Usually takes a dative with this adjective. That would probably explain amicis. It's usually originally an adjective, amicus friendly, but it can also be a substantive, a friend, a noun form, amicus e masculine. That's what it is here. So erat, something was fidelis, he or she was faithful to the dative friends, or he was faithful to his friends, or she was faithful to her friends. Qui. Now, qui is a relative pronoun, who or which. The antecedent is amicis, the noun which goes before it, with which it agrees. So the relative pronoun must agree with the antecedent in gender and number, but not necessarily in case. So if amicis is dative plural masculine, qui must be plural and masculine. It does not have to be dative. Qui is in fact nominative because it's the subject of the verb capti sunt inside its own little clause. Who, antecedents, we're talking about the friends who capti sunt. But first let's keep going with in ponte. In plus the accusative would show motion towards, into or onto, but in plus the ablative shows location, in or on. Pons pontis masculine means bridge. In ponte, we are on the bridge. Ablative of location. Who on the bridge nocte, from nox noctis feminine meaning night. This is the ablative singular feminine, ablative of time when. Night is usually a time word. So at night. When did this happen? It happened at night. Capti sunt, from capio, capere, capi, captus, to capture, to take. Capti sunt is going to be third person plural, perfect passive indicative. It's also going to be masculine. You can tell by the capti, the I ending there. So he or she was faithful or loyal to his or her friends, the friends who were captured, who have been captured on the bridge at night. Tertia, sententia tertia. Hi libri meliore sunt illis, ab optimo poeta scripti sunt. He, from hic haec hoc, this is the nominative plural masculine. So these things right here, these masculine things right here. Libri, from liber, libri, masculine, mean a book. So it's probably going to be nominative plural masculine to go with the nominative plural masculine he. So these books right here, hic haec hoc is right here, close by. Both begin with H, here and hic. Hi libri, these books right here, meliore sunt illis. So melior, this is the comparative of bonus. The positive is bonosaon, good. Better is melior, melioris, and the neuter melios, melioris. The superlative is optimus aon. So meliores is the comparative. Not good, not best, but better. Rather good. And it's probably masculine to go with the masculine he libri and nominative plural as well. These books, meliores sunt illis. They are, sunt, third person plural, present active indicative of sum esse fui futurus. These books are better, meliores, better. We have a comparative, and then illis, from ille, illa, illud, that, over there, yonder, as opposed to hic, which is right here. Ille is far away. Ille is over there. Illis could be dative, plural, of any gender, or more likely it's ablative, an ablative probably masculine, plural, and it's ablative because it's comparison. Ablative of comparison with the comparative meliores. We're comparing thing X, these books, as opposed to thing Y, those books over there. If thing X is nominative or accusative case, we can get rid of the quam and put thing Y in the ablative case to make the ablative of comparison. These books right here are better than those books over there. Ab, aab, preposition, meaning away from, or by, if we have a passive voice verb, and we do. By, optimo, from optimosaon. This is the superlative of bonosaon, where melior is the comparative. Optimo is going to be ablative singular masculine to modify the ablative singular masculine poeta. There should be a macron over the final A in poeta. Poeta I, masculine, by the best poet. Not a good poet, not a bono poeta, not a meliore poeta, a rather good poet, a better poet, but an optimo poeta, the best poet, a very good poet, optime. Scripti sunt. They scripti sunt were, meaning the books, were written. They have been written. Third person plural, perfect passive indicative. You can tell by the ending masculine, plural masculine. So referring to the libri. These books are better than those books over there. They were written. They have been written by a very good poet, by the best poet. Optime, quarta, sententia quarta. Postero die equites flumini propiores erant quam pedites, qui sub monte erant. Postero, from posterosaon, it agrees in gender numbering case, ablative singular masculine with dies, masculine, meaning day. So postero die is the ablative singular masculine, and ablative of time, when. When did this happen? Postero die, on the following day, on the next day. We could just say the next day. Equites, from eques, equitus, masculine. An eques is a horseman, a dude on horseback, or a knight. Plural, you could say the knights, or you could say the cavalry. I'm going to go ahead and say the knights, the dudes on horseback. The next day, the knights. Flumini, from flumen, fluminous, neuter, meaning a river. Don't know why it's dative yet. Oh wait, yes I do. Propiores. We have dative with adjective. The adjective propiores is the comparative of the preposition prope, which acts as its positive degree. So prope plus the accusative means near, nearby, close to. Propiore, propior, propius, the comparative, closer to, nearer to, and it takes a dative. The reason for this dative is dative with adjective, propiores. Propiores, it's either nominative or accusative, masculine or feminine, plural, probably agrees with the equites, so it will be masculine. So there are knights and they erant, were closer to the river. Erant is third person plural imperfect active indicative of sum esse fui futurus. On the next day, on the following day, the knights were closer to the river. Quam pedites? So we are comparing thing X, the equites, to thing Y, the pedites, using quam. Thing X is nominative case, therefore thing Y must also be nominative case. So pedites is nominative plural masculine, a pedes peditus masculine. A singular pedes is a foot soldier, pedites, foot soldiers, or plural infantry, as opposed to the cavalry. On the following day, the knights were closer to the river than the infantry. Propiores is a predicate nominative, by the way, because we have errant, which is a linking verb, linking our nominative subject to our predicate nominative. Pedites, qui sub monte errant. Qui, from qui quae quod, it's a relative pronoun introducing us to a relative clause. It agrees with its antecedent, pedites, in gender and number, not necessarily in case. Though in this case, a hook, they do agree, where pedites is the nominative, qui is also nominative. They are both plural and they are both masculine. They have to be. The infantry, who, sub monte, sub plus the ablative, shows underneath or at the foot of. They're at the foot of the mountain. They're not underneath the mountain. This isn't like the mines of Moria. And then errant is third person plural, imperfect active, indicative of sum esse fui futurus. And there's a lot of these around. Who were at the foot of the mountain, at the foot of the hill. On the following day, the knights were closer to the river than the infantry, who were at the foot of the hill. Quinta, sententia quinta. Num Lucius maior natu tuorum filiorum est? So we're asking a question. This is an interrogative, and we are introducing this interrogative with num, which means that we are expecting the answer to be no. If we wanted the answer to be yes, we would start this off with nonne, but this is just going to be num. If this confuses you, this bothers you, just ignore the interrogative part. Treat it as if it were just a normal declarative sentence. And then once you translate it, then use your extensive knowledge of English grammar and syntax to turn it into an interrogative where you expect a no answer. You should be very good at this because your parents and teachers, adults do this to you all the time, don't they? Just did. So num. I'm going to go ahead and just translate it without the num. Translate it like a normal declarative sentence. Lucius maior natu tuorum filiorum est. So Lucius, Luci masculine, it's a dude's name, Lucius, Luke. So Lucius, nominative singular masculine, maior. Maior is the comparative of magnus. So we have magnosaum, which is big or great. Maior, maioris. If you change that I in the Middle Ages becomes a J because it's a consonantal I. Maior, not maior. It becomes major, bigger, comparative of magnosaum. The superlative is going to be maximosaum, so big, bigger, biggest. Great, greater, greatest, large, larger, largest. So maior means bigger, larger, or greater, major, as opposed to just big. Biggest is maximus. Natu, it's the adverb form of, or it's the ablative form of natus. It means by birth. It acts almost like an adverb. Greatest by birth. Greatest in respect to birth. Technically, it's an ablative of specification. Wait for that lesson. So Lucius maior, nominative singular to agree with Lucius. It's probably going to be a predicate nominative because I peeked ahead. Here's a linking verb. Lucius is the bigger by birth, the greater by birth. Or we could just say the elder, which is the comparative. The elder, meaning the older of two things, two people. Lucius is the elder, tuorum filiorum, of your sons. Tuorum filiorum, tuus filius. Genitive plural, meaning you have two sons. and Lucius is the elder. Now remember, this is an interrogative. We want to translate this declarative, what we just translate as a declarative, back to an interrogative. We want to ask as if we want the answer to be no. So, Lucius isn't the elder of your sons, is he? Think about it as if your parents or your teachers were questioning you, and they were asking you a question in which you know that they want you to say no, the answer no. Something like, "You didn't swallow the stuff under the sink again, did you?" "Ha! No, of course not. Of course I didn't. Lucius isn't the elder of your two sons, is he?" "No, of course not, officer. Why would you say that?" "Nom," the answer we expect is going to be no, or the answer that we want is going to be no. So we ask it in a certain way to get that no answer. Sexta, sententia sexta. Castra maxima ab eorum exercitu trans illud flumen posita sunt. So castra, from castra, castrorum, always neuter, always plural, camp. Nominative or accusative, either the subject or the direct object. Maxima, not just magnosa, big, or maior, maios, bigger, but maximusa, the biggest. And it agrees with castra in gender numbering case, whether it's the subject in the nominative or the direct object in the accusative, I don't know yet. Ab, we're going from, away from. It either takes the ablative showing separation, or if the verb is passive voice, it is indicating the personal agent, the actor, the one who does the passive voice verb. So from or by. Now eorum, hey, that ain't ablative. Eorum is genitive plural, but exercitu is ablative. So from or by the army of them. From or by their army. Their, it's the possessive there. The army of them, genitive plural. Trans plus the accusative means across, beyond, on the other side of. Illud flumen, ille, illa, illud, that over there, yonder. Accusative, singular, and neuter. Has to be accusative because the preposition trans takes the accusative, and then flumen, fluminous, neuter, meaning a river. Also accusative, singular, and neuter. Across which river? Well, it's that one over there yonder. The demonstrative ille points out the river as being far away, yonder, over there. And then posita sunt is our verb, and that closes out the sentence. Pono, ponere, posui, positus. Posita, there's the fourth principal part. It's got that A ending to agree with the castra maxima. So the camp, if you castra ponere, you pitch a camp. But the camp is the subject here, because if you have a not always, but very often, very, very, very often, if you have a passive voice verb, you cannot have an accusative direct object. It is very, very rare, very, very rare to have an accusative direct object if the verb is passive voice. In fact, I think it only shows up in one instance. I'll tell you about it some other time. So it's pretty safe to bet that if the verb is passive voice, like it is here, it's third person plural, perfect, passive, indicative, then we're dealing with a nominative subject here. So the biggest camp, or the very large camp, posita sunt, was pitched, you castra ponere, to pitch a camp, but the camp, passive voice, was pitched by the army of them, by their army. So exercitu with ab is the ablative of personal agent, across that river. A very large camp was pitched by their army across that river. Which river? The one over there yonder. Septima, sententia septima. Naves Romanorum dissimillimae navibus hostium erant. And we really like the erant here. So naves, from navis, navis feminine, It's an I stem and also means ship, boat. Naves, it's either nominative or accusative, plural feminine. And as I already remarked, we have erant, a linking verb, form of sum. Therefore, we cannot have an accusative direct object, so we have a nominative subject. The ships are the subject. Romanorum, of the Romans' ships. The ships which belong to the genitive, plural masculine Romans. The ships of the Romans, dissimillimai. It's a silly six. Remember the silly, billy six that have double L's in their superlatives are faculus and its opposite difficulus, similus and its opposite dissimilus, like what we have here, as well as graculus and humilus. So the ships of the Romans, dissimillimai, they were most dissimilar. They were very silly, unlike, silly six, got a double L there, superlative, very unlike, and it takes a dative. Very dissimilar to, very unlike to the navibus. So we have the ships of the Romans were very dissimilar to the ships. Navis feminine, dative with adjective dissimillimai, navibus is dative, to the ships hostion, genitive plural masculine of hostis masculine, of the enemy. The ships belonging to the enemy. So the ships belonging to the Romans were very unlike the ships belonging to the enemy. And then erant is third person plural, imperfect active indicative of sum esse fui futurus. Once again. Optime. Octava. Sententia octava. Senex, qui in hoc oppido habitat, quinque milia passum ad medium silvam hodie ambulavit. Good for him. Always get a little bit of walking in. Senex. A senex senis masculine is a senile old man. Senex is an old man. It's the root of the word senator. And senate. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Senex, the old man. Qui, relative pronoun, qui qua quod, who or which, must agree with its antecedent, which is senex, in gender and number, not necessarily in case. Though in this case, they do. So the senex is the subject, the old man. Which old man? The one who, subject of this clause. Who in hoc oppido habitat, who in plus the ablative, hic haec hoc. This right here, hic haec hoc is right here. Ablative singular neuter to agree with oppido, the ablative singular neuter of oppidum e neuter, town. Which town? This town right here. The old man who habitat, who third person singular present active indicative of habito, habitare, habitavi, habitatus, to live, dwell, inhabit. The old man who inhabits in this town, who lives in this town, who dwells in this right here town. Which old man? This one, the one right here. Who dwells in this here town. Quinque milia possum. Quinque. It's an indeclinable adjective, the numeral 5, quinque, 5. Milia, from milia, milium, always neuter, always plural. Quinque is indeclinable. It's going to modify it milia because it's closest to milia. And then possum. Possum is the genitive plural masculine of passus us masculine, meaning a pace or a two-step. So you take 2 steps to make a pace, and then 1,000 of these equals a mile. So 1,000, that's about equal to about 5,000 Roman feet. Very close to our mile. So quinque milia possum, that's 5,000s of paces. Thousands of paces. Milia works with a partitive genitive to tell you thousands out of paces, of paces. 5,000 of paces, where milia is the accusative, plural neuter, accusative of extent of space. Shows us how far the action goes. The action goes for the extent of 5,000 of paces. 5,000 paces, or we could say 5 miles. Ad plus the accusative shows motion towards. We're moving towards an accusative, medios aon, in the middle of the silva I feminine forest. Both are accusatives, singular and feminine. To the middle of the forest. I know it looks like it says to the middle forest, but medios aon means the middle of, and then the noun. To the middle of the forest, sumos aon, imos aon, infimos aon, and reliquos aon also work the same way, where it means like the rest of, the top of, the bottom of something, but you don't use the genitive when it uses of. The of is contained in the translation of the adjective. Hodie is a compound of hoc die. It's an adverb meaning today, on this day. And then ambulavit. Adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. Here's modifying the verb ambulavit, telling us when the action occurred. It occurred hodie, today, on this day. Ambulavit, third person singular, perfect active indicative of ambulo, ambulare, ambulavi, ambulatus, to walk, to amble. So who walked? Why, our subject, that nominative old man. Who's that guy? Oh, he lives in this here town. The old man who lives in this town walked for, how far? What extent? For 5 miles to the middle of the forest today. Good for him. Exercise is good for you. Nonna, sententia nonna. Felix non est, is qui felicior miserimis est. Wise. Much wisdom. Felix non est. Felix, felicis, is an adjective meaning lucky, happy, fortunate, and it really, you should stick to the translation fortunate, and then from there decide if it means lucky or happy. It really means fortunate, as opposed to the fortunate is outward things, outside external things, acting on a person, as opposed to leitos, where leitos, happy, that the person is happy because of inward, it comes from inside. Felix comes from the outside, it's external, whereas leitos is internal. So fortunate, it's an adjective. Opposite is infelix, unfortunate, unhappy, unlucky. Felix non est. He is not lucky, not fortunate. She is not fortunate. Is, well, it's got to be he, because is is he, ea would be she. So he is not fortunate. Not fortunate is he who, relative pronoun, agrees with its antecedent in gender and number, nominative singular, or I'm sorry, singular masculine. It happens to be the same case, nominative. Who is this guy who is not lucky? Who felicior, the comparative of felix, felicis, felicior, nominative singular masculine. Miserimis, that's the dative plural masculine of the superlative of miser, misera, miserum, wretched, poor, unfortunate. So unfortunate. Miserimis, dative, with the adjective felicior, and then est closes it off. So the subject is going to be is, he. Well, who is he? Is, ea, id are not always picked up by a qui qua quod, but they often are. Qui qua quod is often the answer to an is, ea, id, because a qui qua quod relative clause will give more information. It will describe what the is, ea, id is. You can say he. I'm going to say, well, who is he? And you can say, well, he is the one who does X, Y, Z. So is qui, he who is est felicior more fortunate miserimis. I'm sorry, I said this was a dative with the adjective. Incorrect. Ablative of comparison. It's going to be an ablative of comparison because we have a comparison felicior. And if we're comparing thing X, which is he, to thing Y, which is them, if thing X is nominative, and it is, or accusative, we can change thing Y to the ablative, as we've done here. He who is more fortunate than the most wretched. He is more fortunate than the most unfortunate. Is not fortunate. The guy who is luckier than the unluckiest isn't necessarily lucky. And decima, sententia decima. Sunt ne plures cives in hac urbe quam in illa? And there should be a question mark at the end of this one, because ne, the enclitic ne, postpositive enclitic, it's attached to the end of the word like an alien parasite, indicates, like in Spanish, an upside down question mark. This tells us we have an interrogative. It's a yes or a no. Simple, neutral, yes, no. If this once again confuses you, then go ahead and translate the sentence as if it were a simple declarative and then turn it into an interrogative, asking a neutral yes or no at the end. Sunt, third person plural, present active indicative, are. Plures. Plures is the plural, and it's the comparative, where we have the plural of multi, I, a, many. The plural is going to be comparative, will be plures, plura, and then the superlative will be plurimi, I, a, very many, or the most. Now, if you have the singular multus much, it does not have a comparative, at least not a comparative adjective. The comparative of multus is supplied for by the noun plus plurus neuter. So if you want more of something in the singular, use the noun plus plurus neuter, and it will take a partive genitive. However, we have cives, from civus, masculine or feminine, can mean common, means citizen. Because cives is plural, and it's got to be nominative because we have a linking verb sunt. Because cives is plural, we have to use the plural plures. Comparative plural plures. The comparative singular would be the noun plus plurus neuter, and would have to take a partive genitive. More of something. Here we have more somethings. More citizens. There are more citizens in hoc urbe, in plus the ablative of location, hic haec hoc. Singular feminine to agree with urbs, orbis feminine, the ablative singular feminine, urbe. In which city? This one right here. And then we have quam, so we have a comparative, right? There are more citizens in this city than in illa, than in that city, in illa urbe. Ablative singular feminine of ille, illa, illud to agree with an implied orbs, orbis feminine, and note, it shouldn't be implied. The Romans didn't like to do this. We should have urbe repeated again. Sunt ne plures cives in hac urbe quam in illa urbe? And we're asking a simple yes or no question. So, are there more citizens in this city right here than in that city over there? Quam in illa? Ottime, very well done. You are now ready to move on to exercise C of chapter 35.